My name is Bethany Morrison, and I'm 28 years old. Standing in my empty bedroom, suitcase packed and ready by the door, I clutched the letter that would change everything. Outside my window, laughter echoed from the backyard where my parents were throwing Madison her 25th birthday party. The same Madison who got everything I ever wanted, everything I ever deserved. They hadn't even remembered to invite me to my own sister's celebration, but that was nothing new. For 28 years, I'd been the invisible daughter, the afterthought, the one who was always expected to understand why Madison came first. But tonight, that all ends. After discovering what I found in Grandma Helen's belongings, I finally have something Madison can't take away from me. Before we dive into this story of family betrayal and ultimate revenge, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you're ready to hear how I finally got justice after years of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family, smash that like button and hit subscribe because this story has more twists than you can imagine. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll understand why that letter made Madison scream in absolute terror. Growing up, I was Daddy's little princess and Mommy's precious angel until everything changed on March 15th when I was 3 years old. That was the day Madison Ruth Morrison entered the world, and from that moment forward, my childhood ended abruptly and permanently. You see, my mother Linda had suffered 3 devastating miscarriages before Madison's birth, and by the time my sister arrived, my parents had convinced themselves she was their miracle baby, their second chance, their golden child who could do absolutely no wrong in their eyes. I remember the exact moment when my status in the Morrison household shifted forever. I was excitedly waiting to meet my new baby sister, wearing my best dress and holding a teddy bear I'd picked out especially for her. But when Dad carried me into that hospital room, Mom barely looked at me. Her entire world had shrunk to encompass only the tiny bundle in her arms. "Bethany, you're going to be the best big sister," she whispered, but her eyes never left Madison's face. "You'll help take care of her, won't you? You're such a good, responsible girl." And just like that, at 3 years old, I became Madison's caretaker instead of being a child myself. The changes happened gradually at first, then all at once like an avalanche. My 4th birthday party was cancelled because Madison had a slight fever and needed Mom's attention. The pink princess bedroom I'd been promised got turned into Madison's nursery instead, and I was moved to the smaller guest room down the hall. When I started kindergarten, my parents missed my school play because Madison was teething and cranky. Every milestone, every achievement, every moment that should have belonged to me got overshadowed by whatever Madison needed at that exact time. By the time I was 10 and Madison was 7, the pattern was completely established and utterly unbreakable. Madison got piano lessons while I was told we couldn't afford them for both of us. Madison got the expensive ballet classes she begged for while I had to settle for free activities at the community center. When report cards came home, my straight A's earned a distracted "good job, honey," while Madison's B's and C's sparked celebration dinners because she's trying so hard and making such wonderful progress. The message was crystal clear even to my young mind. Madison's efforts mattered more than my results, her potential was more important than my achievements, her happiness took precedence over everything else in our family's universe. The only person who saw what was happening and truly cared about me was my grandmother Helen Morrison, Dad's mother, who would visit every Sunday and always made sure to spend equal time with both granddaughters. "You're special too, Bethany," she'd whisper when she thought no one was listening. "Don't you ever forget that, sweet girl. You have gifts your sister doesn't, and someday that's going to matter more than you can imagine right now." I didn't understand what she meant at the time, but I clung to those words like a lifeline during the darkest moments of my childhood. Grandma Helen was the one who remembered my birthday when my parents forgot because they were planning Madison's elaborate party. She was the one who came to my school events when my parents were too busy with Madison's activities. She was the one who bought me clothes that actually fit instead of hand-me-downs that were too small or too big. And most importantly, she was the one who saw my potential and told me I was destined for great things, even when my own parents couldn't be bothered to notice my existence unless they needed me to watch Madison or help with household chores. What I didn't know during those formative years was that Grandma Helen was quietly documenting everything she witnessed, writing detailed letters about the favoritism and neglect she observed in our household. She was also making plans, big plans, that would eventually change my life forever. In her final months before passing away when I was 17, she made arrangements that would give me the power to expose the truth about my family and claim the life I deserved. But those revelations were still years away, and I had to survive the worst betrayals imaginable before I could access the weapons she'd left me. When I turned 18, I thought I was finally escaping the Morrison family dynamics forever. I had worked incredibly hard throughout high school, maintaining a 4.0 GPA while participating in debate team, volunteer work, and 3 different honor societies. My efforts paid off spectacularly when Stanford University offered me a full academic scholarship worth over $200,000. For the first time in my life, I felt like my achievements mattered, like I had value beyond being Madison's responsible older sister. I'll never forget the day that acceptance letter arrived in our mailbox. I ran into the house screaming with joy, waving the thick envelope above my head like a trophy. I got into Stanford, I shouted. Full ride. Everything paid for. My parents looked up from where they were helping Madison with her homework at the kitchen table. Dad smiled briefly and said, "That's nice, honey," before turning back to Madison's algebra problems. Mom nodded absently and muttered something about being proud before refocusing on explaining fractions to my 15-year-old sister who was struggling with basic math. Even their lukewarm reaction couldn't dampen my spirits because I knew this scholarship was my ticket to freedom, my chance to build a life where I mattered, where my efforts were recognized and rewarded. I spent weeks researching my courses, planning my dorm room, and dreaming about the brilliant future that awaited me in California. I had never been happier or more hopeful about what lay ahead. Then, 3 weeks before I was supposed to leave for Stanford, I received an email that destroyed everything I'd worked toward for 4 years. Dear Miss Morrison, it began formally, "We regret to inform you that due to administrative complications, your full scholarship has been withdrawn. We understand this news is disappointing, and we encourage you to reapply for financial aid next year." My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold my phone as I read those devastating words over and over again. I stormed into the living room where my parents were watching television with Madison. "Did you know about this?" I demanded, shoving my phone screen toward their faces. "Did you know Stanford was withdrawing my scholarship?" The guilty looks they exchanged told me everything I needed to know before Dad cleared his throat and began the explanation that would shatter my world completely. "Bethany, we need to talk," he said in the tone people use when they're about to deliver terrible news they've been dreading. "Sit down, please." I remained standing, my entire body rigid with growing dread. "Your mother and I had to make a very difficult decision. Madison's been accepted to the Manhattan School of Music for their pre-college program, and the tuition is $60,000 per year. We simply don't have the resources to support both your college education and Madison's musical training at the same time." The words hit me like physical blows. "You withdrew my scholarship application," I whispered, the horrible truth dawning on me. "You sabotaged my future so Madison could play piano in New York." Mom spoke up then, her voice defensive and sharp. "We didn't withdraw anything, Bethany. We simply contacted Stanford's financial aid office and explained our family's changed circumstances. They made the decision to reallocate your scholarship to a student who needs it more." Madison sat there through this entire conversation, her expression unreadable, saying nothing while my dreams crumbled around me. When I looked at her directly, expecting some sign of sympathy or regret, she shrugged her shoulders and said, "It's not my fault you got your hopes up. Maybe if you were more talented at something useful instead of just being a bookworm, you'd have more options." Then she smiled, that sweet innocent smile she'd perfected over the years, and added, "Besides, you're smart enough to figure something else out. You always do." The next few hours were a blur of arguments, tears, and desperate phone calls. I contacted Stanford directly, but the damage was irreversible. My parents had provided documentation of financial hardship and Madison's extraordinary musical talent, painting me as someone who had other options while Madison's opportunities were supposedly once in a lifetime. The university had already awarded my scholarship to another student, and there was absolutely nothing I could do to change their decision. That night, I lay in my childhood bed staring at the ceiling and facing the devastating reality of my situation. Instead of starting my freshman year at one of the world's most prestigious universities, I would be attending Riverside Community College and working multiple part-time jobs to pay for classes. Instead of building toward my dream career in international law, I would be struggling just to earn basic credits while watching my younger sister pursue her artistic ambitions with the money that should have funded my education. But there was something else that night, something that gave me a tiny spark of hope in the midst of my despair. Hidden under my mattress was a letter from Grandma Helen, written before her death and given to me by her lawyer with strict instructions not to open it until my 18th birthday. In that letter, she revealed that she had established a trust fund in my name, money that would become available when I turned 25. My darling Bethany, she had written, I know your parents favor Madison, and I suspect they will try to sabotage your opportunities to benefit her instead. This money is my insurance policy for your future. Use it wisely, and remember that the truth always comes to light eventually. 7 years felt like forever when I was 18 and watching my sister live the life I should have had, but Grandma Helen's letter gave me something to hold on to during the darkest period of my life. I didn't know then that the trust fund was just the beginning of what she'd left for me, or that her final gift would give me the power to expose every lie my family had built their happiness upon. By the time I turned 23, I had clawed my way through 5 years of community college and state university, working 3 jobs to pay for my education while Madison enjoyed her expensive musical training in Manhattan. Despite every obstacle my family had placed in my path, I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in business administration and secured interviews with several prestigious companies in downtown Chicago. The opportunity that excited me most was a position with Henderson Global Consulting, one of the most respected firms in the city. They were looking for a junior analyst with my exact qualifications and experience. I sailed through 3 rounds of interviews, impressing everyone with my knowledge, work ethic, and innovative ideas for streamlining their client management systems. The hiring manager, Patricia Kelman, even told me privately that I was their top choice and that the formal offer would arrive within the week. I was walking on air for exactly 6 days before everything came crashing down around me. Patricia called me on a Tuesday morning, her voice strangely formal and uncomfortable. Bethany, I'm afraid I have some unexpected news, she began hesitantly. After further consideration and budget review, we've decided to go with another candidate for the junior analyst position. We appreciate your interest in Henderson Global, and we encourage you to apply for future openings. Something in her tone told me there was more to this story than budget constraints. Ms. Kelman, I said carefully, could you help me understand what changed? Last week you indicated that I was the preferred candidate. There was a long pause before she spoke again. Bethany, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I received a very concerning phone call from someone claiming to be a former employer of yours. They raised questions about your reliability and professional judgment that we simply couldn't ignore. My blood ran cold because I knew exactly who had made that call. Could you tell me who contacted you? I asked, though I already knew the answer. A gentleman named Richard Morrison. He said he was the CEO of Morrison Industries and that you had worked for him previously. Is he related to you? She didn't need to wait for my confirmation. The name said everything. That evening, I confronted my father in his home office where he was reviewing contracts for his manufacturing company. You destroyed my job opportunity, I said without any preamble. You called Henderson Global and lied about my work history. Dad didn't even look up from his papers. I didn't lie about anything, he replied calmly. I simply shared my concerns about your tendency to be impulsive and unrealistic in your career expectations. Patricia Kelman needed to know what she was getting into if she hired you. What you were really doing, I said, my voice shaking with rage, was clearing the way for Madison. She needs an internship this summer, and Henderson Global happens to have an opening in their marketing department. Dad finally looked up then, his expression cold and calculating. Madison is a talented, personable young woman who would be an asset to any company. You, on the other hand, have always been difficult and resentful. Perhaps if you spent less time complaining and more time working on your attitude, you'd have better luck in your career. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Dad systematically demolishing every argument I made while maintaining that he was acting in everyone's best interest. According to him, I was too ambitious for my own good, too demanding, too unwilling to accept that sometimes life doesn't go according to plan. Madison, meanwhile, was realistic, flexible, and deserving of every opportunity that came her way. Within 2 weeks, Madison started her internship at Henderson Global Consulting, working directly under Patricia Kelman in the marketing department. She charmed everyone with her bubbly personality and artistic flair, quickly becoming the office favorite despite having no relevant experience or qualifications. When her internship ended 3 months later, they offered her a full-time position with a starting salary that was $15,000 higher than what they had planned to offer me for the analyst role. I ended up taking a job with a much smaller firm, earning barely enough to cover my student loans and basic living expenses. Every day was a struggle, every bill was a source of stress, every reminder of what I'd lost felt like a fresh wound. But during this period, I also gained something invaluable, a friendship with Jake Patterson, a coworker who recognized my situation for what it really was and became the first person outside of Grandma Helen to truly see and support me. Jake was 26 years old, brilliant with numbers, and completely immune to the Morrison family charm that had fooled so many others over the years. When I finally told him the whole story about my parents' favoritism and systematic sabotage, he didn't try to minimize my experiences or suggest that I was exaggerating. Instead, he looked me in the eyes and said, "Bethany, what they're doing to you isn't normal family dynamics. It's abuse, and you deserve so much better than this." Having Jake validate my experiences gave me strength I hadn't felt in years, but it also made me more determined to break free from my family's toxic patterns once and for all. I was 24 years old, just 1 year away from accessing Grandma Helen's trust fund, and I was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could build a life where my worth wasn't determined by how much I was willing to sacrifice for Madison's happiness. At 25, I finally had access to Grandma Helen's trust fund, which turned out to be more substantial than I had dared to hope. Along with the money came a second letter explaining that she had been documenting my parents' favoritism for years and had left me resources to fight back when I was ready. But even more importantly, I had met Derek Collins, a wonderful man who worked in software development and seemed to genuinely love me for exactly who I was. Derek was everything I had never expected to find: kind, intelligent, financially stable, and completely unimpressed by superficial charm or manipulation. We met at a coffee shop where I was working on my laptop during lunch break, and he struck up a conversation about the marketing proposal I was reviewing. 3 hours later, we were still talking, and I felt more understood and appreciated than I had in my entire life. We dated for 8 months before I introduced him to my family, and those were the happiest months I'd experienced since childhood. Derek listened when I talked about my work, celebrated my small victories, and supported my big dreams. He made me feel like I mattered, like my thoughts and opinions had value, like I was worthy of love and respect. For the first time ever, I started to believe that I might actually get a happy ending despite everything my family had put me through. The family dinner where Derek met my parents and Madison should have been a warning sign, but I was too blinded by happiness to recognize the danger. Madison was 22 then, fresh out of college and working at Henderson Global, and she turned her full attention to Derek from the moment he walked through our front door. She wore a stunning red dress that showed off her figure perfectly, styled her hair in loose curls, and spent the entire evening asking Derek thoughtful questions about his work and interests. "Derek, you're absolutely fascinating," she gushed during dessert, leaning forward just enough to give him a perfect view down her neckline. I had no idea software development could be so creative and challenging. Bethany never explained it properly. She shot me a quick smile that looked sweet to everyone else but felt like a knife between my ribs. "You're much more interesting than she made you sound." My parents, naturally, were enchanted by Derek and immediately began suggesting that he was too good for me. "Derek, you seem like such a level-headed, successful young man," Mom said while clearing the dinner plates. "I hope Bethany appreciates how lucky she is." Dad nodded enthusiastically and added, "Yes, it's about time she found someone who might settle her down a bit. She's always been rather intense and demanding in relationships." Over the following weeks, Madison began inserting herself into Derek's life with surgical precision. She would call him directly with questions about technology problems, invite herself along when we had dinner plans, and show up at his apartment building claiming she was in the neighborhood and thought she'd say hello. Each time, she was perfectly innocent, perfectly sweet, perfectly impossible to confront without looking jealous and insecure. The real devastation began 3 months later when Madison tearfully confided in Derek that she was pregnant. She claimed the father was a musician from New York who had abandoned her when she told him about the baby, leaving her scared and alone with nowhere to turn. Derek, being the kind and protective man I loved, immediately offered to help her through this difficult time. "She's your sister, Bethany," he said when I expressed discomfort with his increased involvement in Madison's crisis. "She needs support right now, and we're the closest thing to family she has who actually cares about her well-being. I know you two have had your differences, but this is bigger than sibling rivalry." When I tried to explain that Madison was manipulating him, that her pregnancy was suspiciously convenient timing, Derek accused me of being cold and unsympathetic toward my sister's genuine distress. Within 6 weeks, Derek was spending more time with Madison than he was with me. She needed rides to doctor's appointments, help moving to a larger apartment, emotional support during her morning sickness, and someone to accompany her to prenatal classes since the baby's father was out of the picture. Every conversation Derek and I had eventually circled back to Madison's needs and how I should be more understanding of her situation. The final blow came when Derek showed up at my apartment with a bouquet of flowers and a guilty expression I'd never seen before. "Bethany, we need to talk," he began, and my heart immediately started racing because those words never preceded good news. "I care about you deeply, but I've realized that I have feelings for Madison that I can't ignore anymore. She's vulnerable right now, carrying a baby with no support system, and I want to be there for her in a way that goes beyond friendship." I stared at him in absolute disbelief. "You're leaving me for my pregnant sister," I said slowly, trying to process the impossibility of what I was hearing. "You're choosing her over me because she's having another man's baby." Derek winced at my bluntness but nodded. "I know how this looks, and I know it hurts, but sometimes love happens in unexpected ways. Madison and I connect on a level that feels deeper and more meaningful than what you and I had together. I think, if you're honest with yourself, you'll admit that we weren't really right for each other long term." 2 weeks later, Derek proposed to Madison in front of both of our families at Sunday dinner. She said yes through happy tears, showing off the diamond ring that should have been mine while my parents beamed with joy and talked about how perfect they were together. "Derek will take such good care of Madison and the baby," Mom gushed, hugging them both. "This is exactly what our family needed." But then, just 1 month after their engagement, Madison had a miscarriage. She was devastated, or at least she appeared to be, crying for days about losing the baby that had brought her and Derek together. However, something about her grief seemed performative to me, too dramatic and convenient. When I tried to express my suspicions to Jake, even he initially thought I was being paranoid and bitter about losing Derek. It wasn't until 6 months later that I discovered the truth. While cleaning out Madison's old bedroom to convert it into a home office, I found a box hidden under her bed containing pregnancy test boxes, but not the kind you'd expect. These were fake positive pregnancy tests, ordered online, along with printed emails confirming her purchase and instructions for how to use them convincingly. There were also detailed notes in Madison's handwriting about Derek's schedule, his favorite restaurants, and specific things he'd mentioned wanting in a future wife and mother to his children. The discovery hit me like a physical blow because it confirmed every suspicion I'd harbored but been afraid to voice. Madison had systematically seduced Derek away from me using a fabricated pregnancy, and my parents had supported her deception every step of the way. When I confronted her with the evidence, she laughed and said, "Derek was never really yours anyway, Bethany. I just helped him realize what he actually wanted. If you were enough for him, a fake pregnancy wouldn't have mattered." That night, sitting alone in my apartment with the fake pregnancy test spread across my kitchen table, I seriously considered ending my life. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I couldn't imagine ever trusting anyone again or believing that I deserved genuine love and happiness. Jake found me there at 2 in the morning after I'd called him crying incoherently, and he literally saved my life by staying with me until dawn and helping me see that Madison's evil didn't reflect my worth as a person. On my 26th birthday, exactly 1 year after gaining access to Grandma Helen's trust fund, I received another letter from her estate lawyer revealing that there was significantly more to her legacy than just the money. Grandma Helen had also left me her Victorian house in the historic district of our city, along with all of its contents, including furniture, artwork, and personal belongings that had been in the Morrison family for 4 generations. The house alone was worth approximately $1.5 million, and the antiques and artwork inside pushed the total value of my inheritance to nearly $2.5 million. Along with the trust fund, this legacy would give me complete financial independence and the power to build whatever life I chose for myself without ever again depending on my family's approval or support. But there was something else in that final letter from Grandma Helen that changed everything I thought I knew about my family's dynamics. "My dearest Bethany," she had written in her careful handwriting, "I have spent years watching your parents treat you as less important than Madison, and I have documented every instance of their favoritism and cruelty. However, there are secrets about Madison's parentage that your father has kept hidden for over 20 years, secrets that explain why they have always favored her despite their treatment being so obviously unfair to you." The letter went on to explain that Grandma Helen had discovered years earlier that Madison was not actually my father's biological daughter. Mom had been having an affair with a music teacher named Vincent Rossi during the year Madison was conceived, and DNA evidence existed to prove that Vincent, not my father, was Madison's real parent. Dad knew the truth but had decided to raise Madison as his own daughter anyway because he loved Mom and wanted to preserve their marriage. According to Grandma Helen's investigation, my parents' extreme favoritism toward Madison was their way of overcompensating for the deception they were living with every single day. They spoiled Madison and prioritized her needs because they felt guilty about the lies surrounding her birth, and they expected me to sacrifice my own happiness to maintain their family's facade of normalcy. Armed with this devastating information, I finally understood why nothing I ever did was good enough to earn my parents' love and why every achievement I accomplished was dismissed as less important than Madison's mediocre efforts. They weren't just playing favorites, they were protecting a secret that would destroy their marriage and Madison's sense of identity if it ever came to light. However, when I went to claim my inheritance from Grandma Helen's house, I discovered that my family had been planning to contest the will for months. They had hired a lawyer named Carson Wright who specialized in challenging estate distributions, and they had been building a case claiming that I was mentally unstable and financially irresponsible, therefore unfit to inherit such valuable assets. The evidence they presented included documentation of my supposedly erratic behavior after Derek left me for Madison, testimony from family friends claiming I'd always been jealous and vindictive toward my sister, and financial records showing that I'd changed jobs multiple times in recent years. They painted a picture of someone who was too emotionally unstable and career-wise unreliable to handle a multi-million-dollar inheritance responsibly. Carson Wright's strategy was particularly insidious because he focused on my reaction to Madison's relationship with Derek, arguing that my anger over their engagement proved I had serious mental health issues that made me dangerous to myself and others. Miss Morrison has demonstrated a pattern of inappropriate jealousy and resentment toward her sister, he argued during our first court hearing. Allowing her to inherit this substantial estate would enable her worst impulses and potentially put Madison's safety at risk. My parents sat in that courtroom looking appropriately concerned and heartbroken, playing the role of loving family members who were only trying to protect me from myself. Madison dabbed at her eyes with tissues and spoke in a trembling voice about how worried she was about my mental state and how she just wanted me to get the help I needed to be healthy and happy again. Fortunately, Jake had connected me with an excellent lawyer named Diane Foster who specialized in estate law and family litigation. Diane immediately recognized that my family's case was built on lies and manipulation, and she began gathering evidence to expose their true motivations for challenging Grandma Helen's will. The legal battle lasted for 8 months and cost me nearly $50,000 in attorney fees, but ultimately Diane was able to prove that my family's claims about my mental instability were fabricated and that their real motivation was financial greed rather than genuine concern for my well-being. The court ruled in my favor, granting me full access to my inheritance and ordering my family to pay my legal costs. But even winning that case felt hollow because it confirmed beyond any doubt that my parents were willing to destroy my reputation and steal my rightful inheritance to protect Madison's interests. They weren't just neglectful or misguided, they were actively malicious toward me and would stop at nothing to ensure that Madison remained their priority in every situation. Sitting in my inherited Victorian house for the first time as its legal owner, surrounded by Grandma Helen's antique furniture and family photographs, I realized that I now had the resources to expose every lie my family had built their happiness upon. The question was whether I had the courage to use those resources and the emotional strength to handle the fallout that would inevitably follow. Madison's engagement party to Derek was scheduled for a beautiful Saturday evening in June at the country club where my parents had been members for over 20 years. The invitation arrived in my mailbox 3 weeks beforehand, addressed in Madison's perfect calligraphy with a note that said, "I hope you can find it in your heart to celebrate with us despite everything that's happened. Derek and I would love to have your support as we start our new life together." I almost didn't go to that party because being around Derek and Madison together was still incredibly painful, but Jake convinced me that attending would actually work in my favor long term. "Let them think you've accepted the situation," he advised. "Let them believe they've broken you completely. That will make them careless, and careless people make mistakes that expose their true nature to everyone around them." The party was everything I expected it to be. Elegant, expensive, and designed to showcase Madison as the perfect bride-to-be. She wore a flowing white dress that made her look angelic, and Derek stayed by her side all evening, his hand protectively on her lower back, his eyes full of adoration when he looked at her. My parents circulated through the crowd accepting congratulations and beaming with pride about their daughter's wonderful match. I had been at the party for approximately 2 hours, making polite conversation and pretending to be happy for the couple, when my mother approached me with a concerned expression and a small group of family friends trailing behind her. "Bethany, dear," she said in a voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "we need to discuss some things that have come to our attention recently. Could you step outside with me for a moment?" What followed was a carefully orchestrated intervention designed to publicly humiliate me and establish a narrative about my mental health that would justify whatever they planned to do next. Standing on the country club's terrace with a dozen witnesses watching, Mom began listing concerns about my behavior over the past year. My isolation from family activities, my anger about Madison's relationship with Derek, my legal battle over Grandma Helen's inheritance, and my supposed inability to maintain stable employment. "We're all worried about you," she said with tears in her eyes that looked completely genuine. "You haven't been yourself since Derek and Madison got together, and we think you might benefit from some professional help to work through these difficult emotions. There's a wonderful residential treatment facility about an hour from here where you could get the support you need to heal and move forward with your life." Dad joined the conversation then, along with Dr. Marcus Webb, a psychiatrist they had apparently consulted about my situation. Dr. Webb spoke in soothing, professional tones about depression, anxiety, and the importance of accepting help when family members express legitimate concerns about someone's well-being. He had already prepared intake paperwork for the residential facility and was encouraging me to sign myself involuntarily rather than forcing them to pursue an involuntary commitment. The entire scene was theater designed to make me look unstable and dangerous while positioning my family as caring relatives who were trying to help me despite my resistance to their support. Madison appeared on the terrace at exactly the right moment, approaching with Derek and several other party guests who had come outside to see what was happening. "Oh, Bethany," Madison said, her voice breaking with what sounded like genuine emotion, "I had no idea you were struggling this much. Please let us help you. I know our situation with Derek is complicated, but I never wanted you to suffer like this. If getting better means spending some time away from all of us, then that's what needs to happen." She even reached out to hug me, and when I stepped back reflexively, it looked to everyone watching like I was rejecting her sincere offer of sisterly support. Derek spoke up then, his voice full of concern and regret. "Bethany, if I had known that Madison and I getting together would affect you this severely, I would have handled things differently. The last thing either of us wanted was to cause you this kind of pain. Please consider getting the help your family is offering. You deserve to be happy and healthy, and right now you're clearly struggling with both of those things." Standing there surrounded by dozens of people who believed I was having a mental breakdown, listening to my family and my former boyfriend express their fake concern for my well-being, I realized that this was their endgame. They wanted to have me committed to a psychiatric facility where I would lose control of my inheritance and my ability to expose their secrets. Once I was locked away as a mental patient, they could spin whatever narrative they wanted about my supposed instability and potentially gain access to the money and property Grandma Helen had left me. But I also realized in that moment that I had been preparing for this exact scenario without even knowing it. Over the past year, I had been documenting every interaction with my family, recording conversations with my phone, and gathering evidence of their systematic campaign to undermine and control me. Jake had helped me research their financial situation and had discovered that Dad's business was in serious trouble due to some bad investments and that Mom had been spending extravagantly on Madison's lifestyle. Looking around at all those concerned faces, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of fighting back or defending myself, I would let them think they had won. I would give them exactly what they thought they wanted and see how quickly their masks fell off when they believed I was completely powerless to stop them. "You're right," I said quietly, my voice shaking with what everyone interpreted as emotional breakdown but was actually controlled fury. "I haven't been thinking clearly lately, and I probably do need help. If you think this treatment facility is the best option, then I'll trust your judgment." The relief on my parents' faces was immediate and unmistakable, confirming that this had been their plan all along. That night, I went home and wrote a letter that would serve as the opening move in the final game between my family and me. But instead of committing myself to their psychiatric facility, I was going to disappear completely and let them think they had driven me to the ultimate desperate act. It was risky, potentially dangerous, but it was also the only way to expose their true nature when they thought no one was watching anymore. Instead of checking into the psychiatric facility my parents had chosen, I used the resources from Grandma Helen's inheritance to disappear completely from my old life. I rented a small apartment across town under a false name, quit my job through a resignation letter that suggested I was having a breakdown, and began implementing the most important plan of my life. During the 3 months I spent in hiding, I used private investigators and DNA testing services to confirm everything Grandma Helen had told me about Madison's parentage. The results were exactly what I expected. Vincent Rossi, the music teacher Mom had been involved with 23 years ago, was indeed Madison's biological father. Even more shocking was what I discovered about Vincent himself when I tracked him down to his current home in Portland, Oregon. Vincent had become a successful composer and music producer, and he had no idea he had a daughter living in Chicago. When I contacted him and explained the situation, providing DNA evidence to support my claims, he was devastated to learn that Linda had hidden Madison's existence from him for over 2 decades. "I loved Linda deeply," he told me during our phone conversation, "and if I had known she was pregnant with my child, I would have left my wife immediately to be with them both. I've spent 23 years wondering what might have been different if I'd fought harder for our relationship." But Vincent also revealed something that completely changed my understanding of my family's financial situation. "Linda contacted me about 5 years ago asking for money," he said. "She claimed she was in a difficult situation and needed help, but she never mentioned anything about having my daughter. I sent her $50,000 because I still cared about her, but I never heard from her again after that. This information led me to investigate my parents' finances more thoroughly, and what I discovered was staggering. Over the past 5 years, my father's manufacturing company had lost over $2 million due to poor business decisions and market changes he hadn't anticipated. To cover their losses and maintain their lifestyle, my parents had been borrowing money against their house, liquidating retirement accounts, and apparently soliciting funds from Mom's former lovers. Even more damning was the paper trail I found showing that they had been systematically stealing money intended for my education and future opportunities to fund Madison's expensive lifestyle and training. The money for my Stanford education hadn't just been redirected, it had been deliberately embezzled from accounts that my grandparents had established specifically for my college fund. While gathering this evidence, I also discovered the truth about Derek's relationship with Madison, and it was even worse than I had imagined. Through a private investigator, I learned that Derek had been having an affair with his coworker Sarah Chen for the entire 6 months of his engagement to Madison. The investigator had photographs of Derek and Sarah together at hotels, restaurants, and even at Sarah's apartment when Madison was supposedly too sick with morning sickness to see him. The timeline made it clear that Derek had never truly loved Madison. He had simply been manipulated into feeling responsible for her fake pregnancy and then trapped into an engagement he didn't really want. His affair with Sarah proved that he was desperately looking for a way out of the commitment Madison had forced him into through her deception. But perhaps the most devastating evidence I gathered was a series of recordings I had made during family gatherings over the past year using a digital recorder I kept in my purse. These recordings captured my parents and Madison having conversations they never would have had if they'd known I was listening, conversations that revealed the depth of their contempt for me and their willingness to destroy my life to protect their secrets. In one particularly damning recording from Madison's birthday party, I caught her admitting to our mother that she had never been pregnant and that the entire situation with Derek had been a calculated plan to hurt me. "I can't believe how easy it was," Madison laughed. "Derek was so guilty about leaving Bethany that he didn't even question the pregnancy. And the best part is that now everyone thinks I'm the victim because I lost the baby." Mom's response on that recording was even more chilling. "You did what you had to do to protect our family, sweetheart. Bethany has always been jealous of you, and if we hadn't intervened, she would have found ways to sabotage your happiness for years to come. Sometimes you have to be ruthless to protect the people you love most." Armed with all of this evidence, DNA test results, financial records, photographs of Derek's affair, and recordings of my family's admissions of guilt, I began planning the final confrontation that would expose every lie they had built their lives upon. But first, I needed to create the perfect setup that would make them reveal their true nature to the world without any possibility of denying what they had done. The plan I developed was risky and emotionally difficult, but it was also the only way to ensure that everyone who had believed their lies about me would see the truth with their own eyes. I was going to fake my own death, leave behind evidence of their crimes disguised as a suicide note, and then return at the moment when they thought they were finally free of me forever. It took me 2 weeks to prepare everything perfectly. Fake identification documents that would allow me to disappear temporarily, a detailed letter that would expose their secrets while appearing to be a confession of my own supposed crimes, and hidden cameras throughout my old house that would record their reactions when they thought no one was watching. The hardest part of the entire plan was knowing that Jake would suffer during the time when everyone believed I was dead, but I couldn't risk telling him the truth because his genuine grief would be necessary to make the deception convincing. I left him a separate letter that would only be delivered after the truth was revealed, explaining everything and begging for his forgiveness for putting him through such pain. My disappearance was planned for a Tuesday evening in early September when I knew my family would all be together at my parents' house for their weekly dinner. I left my car at the edge of a bridge about 20 miles from the city, positioned to look like I had jumped into the river below. Inside the car, I placed a detailed letter that would serve multiple purposes. It would appear to be a suicide note explaining my inability to cope with family rejection, but it would also contain enough clues about my family's secrets to plant seeds of doubt in anyone who read it carefully. "Dear family," the letter began, "by the time you read this, I will finally be free from the pain you have caused me throughout my entire life. I can no longer live with the knowledge that I will never be good enough, never be loved, never be worthy of the same consideration you have always given Madison without question. The letter went on to detail specific instances of favoritism and betrayal, but it was written in a way that made me sound bitter and unstable rather than revealing the calculated nature of my family's campaign against me. However, buried within the emotional rambling were crucial facts that would eventually expose their lies: mentions of Madison's parentage, references to stolen education funds, and hints about Derek's affair that would lead investigators to the truth. Most importantly, the letter ended with a section that I knew would drive Madison absolutely crazy with curiosity. I have left something for Madison in Grandma Helen's house, something that will explain everything about why our family has been so complicated. The gift is hidden in the place where Grandma Helen kept her most precious secrets, and Madison will know where to look if she really wants to understand the truth about herself. I knew Madison's personality well enough to predict that she wouldn't be able to resist searching for this mysterious gift, especially when she was grieving and looking for closure about our relationship. What she would find instead would destroy every comfortable lie she had ever believed about herself and her place in our family. The hidden cameras I had installed throughout Grandma Helen's house were professional grade and virtually invisible, positioned to capture every room where I expected the drama to unfold. I had also arranged for the footage to be automatically uploaded to a secure server that Jake would be able to access when the time came to reveal the truth. For 5 days after my supposed death, I stayed hidden in my secret apartment monitoring news reports and social media posts about my disappearance. My family's public reaction was exactly what I expected. They played the role of grieving relatives perfectly, giving interviews about how much they loved me and how devastated they were by my tragic decision to end my life. Madison was particularly convincing in her performance, crying beautifully for the news cameras and talking about how she wished she had done more to help me through my depression. "I keep thinking about things I could have said or done differently," she sobbed during one interview. "Bethany was my big sister, and I should have been there for her when she needed me most." Derek also spoke to reporters, expressing regret about how our relationship had ended and suggesting that he felt partially responsible for my emotional breakdown. "I never wanted to hurt Bethany," he said, looking appropriately devastated. "If I had known that Madison and I getting together would push her to this extreme, I would have handled the situation completely differently." But what the cameras and interviews didn't capture were the private conversations my family was having when they thought no one was listening. The recording equipment I had hidden in my parents' house picked up everything, including Dad's immediate concern about whether my death would affect his ability to access my inheritance and Mom's relief that they no longer had to worry about me exposing their financial problems. "Thank God she never found out about the Vincent situation," Mom said to Dad on the night after my supposed death. "Can you imagine the damage she could have done if she had learned the truth about Madison's father? This is tragic, but at least now our secrets are safe." Madison's reaction was even more revealing. Instead of genuine grief, she seemed primarily excited about the possibility of inheriting some of my belongings and potentially gaining access to Grandma Helen's house. "Do you think Bethany left me anything in her will?" she asked Mom during a conversation I recorded 2 days after my disappearance. "I mean, I know she resented me, but we were still sisters. And that house has so many beautiful things that would mean a lot more to me than they ever meant to her." On Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after my fake suicide, Madison finally made her way to Grandma Helen's house to search for the gift I had mentioned in my letter. I watched through my hidden cameras as she let herself in with the spare key my parents had kept and began systematically searching every room for whatever I had supposedly left for her. It took her nearly 3 hours to think of checking Grandma Helen's old bedroom closet, where she found an ornate wooden box hidden behind a panel in the back wall. Inside that box was everything that would destroy her world. The DNA test results proving Vincent Rossi was her father, copies of financial records showing how my education money had been stolen to pay for her training, recordings of her admitting that she had faked her pregnancy to steal Derek, and photographs of Derek's ongoing affair with Sarah Chin. But the most devastating item in the box was a letter I had written specifically for Madison, a letter that explained everything I knew about her parentage and our family's financial crimes while making it clear that I had documented everything and that the truth would eventually come to light regardless of what happened to me. The recording of Madison's reaction when she opened that box and realized what she was looking at will stay with me forever. She started by laughing, thinking the DNA results had to be some kind of joke. But as she read through document after document, her laughter turned to confusion, then to horror, and finally to a scream of pure rage that echoed through the empty house. "You're joking," she shrieked at the top of her lungs, throwing papers across the room. "This can't be real. This is impossible." But even as she screamed denials, I could see in her face that she recognized the truth in everything I had left for her to find. Madison's scream of "you're joking" was still echoing through Grandma Helen's house when I walked through the front door, very much alive and ready to confront my family with the truth they had been hiding for over 20 years. The look of absolute terror on Madison's face when she saw me standing in the doorway was worth every moment of pain and planning that had led to this confrontation. "Hello, sister," I said calmly, pulling out my phone to stop the recording that had been live streaming her reaction to my social media accounts. "I see you found my gift. I hope it was everything you hoped it would be." Madison was so shocked she couldn't speak, just stood there with her mouth hanging open and DNA test results scattered around her feet like confetti. Within minutes, my parents arrived at the house after Madison called them hysterically, and Derek followed shortly after when Madison texted him to come immediately. The four of them stood in Grandma Helen's living room staring at me like I was a ghost, which I suppose I was in a way since they had all believed I was dead for the past week. "Bethany," Dad said finally, his voice shaking with what might have been relief or might have been fear, "we thought you were dead. How could you put us through that kind of grief? Do you have any idea what this week has been like for people who love you?" The irony of him talking about love after everything they had done to me was almost too much to bear. "I know exactly what this week has been like for you," I replied, pulling out a tablet that contained all of the recordings I had made during my supposed death. "I know because I've been listening to every conversation you've had since my disappearance. Would you like to hear some of your greatest hits? How about the one where Mom expressed relief that I was finally dead so your secrets would be safe forever?" I played several of the most damaging recordings while my family stood there in stunned silence, listening to their own voices revealing their true feelings about me and their relief that they no longer had to maintain their facade of loving concern. Each recording hit them like a physical blow, and I watched their faces change from shock to fear to desperate calculation as they tried to figure out how to salvage the situation. "And Madison," I continued, turning to my sister who was still clutching the DNA test results, "I see you've learned some interesting facts about your parentage today. Vincent Rossi sends his regards, by the way. I contacted him last month and told him all about the daughter he never knew he had. He's very excited to meet you, though he's somewhat less excited about the 23 years of child support he's going to owe once this all becomes public." Derek looked confused and horrified as he started to understand the implications of what I was revealing. "Madison, what is she talking about?" he asked, reaching for the papers in her hands. "What DNA test results? What about your father?" When Madison couldn't answer, I helpfully explained about Mom's affair and the fact that Richard Morrison had never been Madison's biological father. But I wasn't finished with my revelations. I also had evidence of Derek's ongoing affair with Sarah Chen, complete with photographs and hotel receipts that proved he had been cheating on Madison for months. I had documentation of my parents' financial crimes, including the theft of my education funds and their systematic embezzlement from various family accounts. I had recordings of Madison admitting to faking her pregnancy and deliberately destroying my relationship with Derek. The most beautiful part of this entire situation, I told them as they stood there absorbing the magnitude of what I had uncovered, is that everything you did to hurt me has backfired spectacularly. Madison, Derek never loved you. He was just trapped by your fake pregnancy and too guilty to leave. Derek, Madison was never pregnant. She used fake pregnancy tests and manipulated you into proposing because she wanted to hurt me, not because she loved you. Mom and Dad, your precious golden child isn't even your biological daughter, and Vincent Rossi is going to want answers about why you kept her from him for over 2 decades. The confrontation continued for another hour as each family member tried to deny, minimize, or justify their actions. Dad claimed he had only sabotaged my career opportunities to teach me humility and resilience. Mom insisted that her favoritism toward Madison was just maternal instinct and that I had always been too sensitive about normal family dynamics. Madison argued that her deception about the pregnancy was justified because Derek and I weren't really right for each other anyway. But their denials fell apart completely when I revealed that everything we had just discussed was being live-streamed to social media accounts that thousands of people were watching in real time. Everyone who had attended Madison's engagement party and witnessed my supposed mental breakdown was now seeing the truth about my family's systematic campaign to destroy my life. The livestream also captured Derek's reaction when he fully understood that his engagement to Madison was based entirely on lies and manipulation. "You were never pregnant," he said to Madison, his voice filled with disgust and betrayal. "You made me believe I was going to be a father, made me feel responsible for you and a baby that never existed. Everything about our relationship has been a lie." He pulled the engagement ring off her finger and threw it across the room before walking out of the house without another word. Within 24 hours, the livestream video had been viewed over 2 million times and had been picked up by local news stations as a story about family dynamics and social media drama. Derek's software development company released a statement distancing themselves from the situation, but Derek himself disappeared from social media and apparently left town to avoid the attention and embarrassment. My father's business partner saw the livestream and immediately began investigating the financial irregularities I had exposed, leading to criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud that resulted in Dad losing his company and facing potential prison time. Mom filed for divorce within the week, claiming she had been as victimized by Dad's deceptions as everyone else, though the recordings I had made clearly showed her full participation in every scheme against me. Madison faced the most difficult adjustment because her entire identity had been built on lies that were now exposed for everyone to see. Vincent Rossi did contact her and expressed interest in building a relationship, but Madison was so angry and humiliated by the situation that she refused to speak with him. She also lost her job at Henderson Global when the company learned about her role in the fraudulent schemes that had gotten her hired in the first place. But for me, the most satisfying outcome was the vindication of knowing that Grandma Helen had been right about the truth always coming to light eventually. I used my inheritance to establish the Helen Morrison Foundation, which provides support and resources for young people who are experiencing favoritism, abuse, or neglect in their families. Jake became the foundation's first program director, and we've helped hundreds of families learn healthier ways to show love and support to all of their children. As for my relationship with my family, there really isn't one anymore. Dad is serving a 2-year sentence for financial crimes, and I have no interest in maintaining contact with him when he's released. Mom moved to Florida and occasionally sends cards on holidays, but we don't have meaningful conversations about what happened or about rebuilding our relationship. Madison changed her name to Madison Rossi and moved to Portland to be near her biological father, but she has never apologized for the years of pain she caused me. Sometimes people ask me if I regret exposing my family's secrets so publicly, or if I feel guilty about the consequences they faced because of my revelations. The answer is absolutely not. They chose to build their happiness on lies and cruelty, and they chose to sacrifice my well-being to protect their deceptions. I simply chose to stop enabling their behavior and to claim the life I deserve to live. Now I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever experienced favoritism in your family? How did you handle it? Do you think I went too far in exposing my family's lies, or was this the justice they deserved after years of treating me like I didn't matter? Let me know your thoughts below because I love reading your stories and learning from your experiences. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to help other people find it, and subscribe to my channel because I share new stories about overcoming family drama every week. Don't forget to share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they're not alone in dealing with toxic family dynamics and that it's possible to build a better life even after the worst betrayals imaginable. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you are worthy of love and respect regardless of how your family has treated you in the past. Your worth is not determined by other people's inability to see your value, and you have the power to create the life and relationships you truly deserve.